Welcome to Real Talk, Real Solutions, where authentic talk takes place with a biblical perspective. So, guys, it's been a while. I know. Let me see. Why do I have myself looking like that? Let me make it. There we go. Um, so welcome to once again, welcome to Real Talk, Real Solutions. So today I wanted to go live about a message that I heard today at church. It really challenged me in this area because sometimes we don't talk about or talk enough about what happens when faith meets disappointment. So I am going to play this video, and this was at my church by Pastor Guy. And let's get into it. Let's watch it together. I'll pause it along the way, have some conversations here and there about it, and let's get engaged. Leave your comments in the comment section. If you want to come on live, I give that invitation to you if you would like, but we are going to get into this video and let's get started. And I have some in the comment section in the comment section. Okay, can I talk today? It says, I have a question that says, have you ever been disappointed even while trusting God? What helped you keep your faith? Or what are you struggling with right now? Hi, Hazen Aswad. Hi, welcome to the live today. So let's get started. Full screen. Okay, just let me see. Normal. Gonna speed it up just a little. Okay. All right, here we go. Let me get that off there. Okay, here we go.
Well, hey, everybody. I certainly want to welcome you to week 2 of our series, Faith When Life Hurts. We've actually been able to put together a very creative invitation for you to be able to invite your friends to come out. And I guarantee you, if you do come out, they'll join with you, that they're going to thank you in the future, because so much of us, experience hurt throughout our lives, and to know that there is hope and help from God, what a difference that could make for them. So you can grab one of these on your way out at our campuses, and I hope that you will take advantage of that. How many, let's say in the last 12 months, have experienced some sort of disappointment in your life? Can you answer your hand? Like, you've experienced some? Yeah, like I know I have, universal that way. And disappointment can come from us in a number of different ways. It can come from our circumstances, it can come from people in our lives, and sometimes it can even come from ourselves. A disappointment could be something as simple as, you plan a vacation and you really, look forward to it, you go, and then the weather is just terrible. And that's disappointing, isn't it? Sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated or intense for us. Like, we look ahead to the next year and say, this year, we're going to have some economic relief. Inflation will go down and prices are going to get better. And then we look at gas prices right now, and it's what? Yeah, it's really disappointing at that point, isn't it? Maybe this year you applied to go to college and you did not get your first choice in college, or your second, or your third. And you're just really trying to deal with that letdown that's coming from that. Could be this year, you're really hoping that you're going to be able to get pregnant and you haven't been able to. Or you're hoping that you wouldn't get pregnant, and here you are. Right? Sometimes people is what is the source of our disappointments in our lives. We look to somebody and we're expecting that they're going to come through for us, and they just don't. Maybe it was a leader in your life. Maybe it was a friend in your life. Maybe you had expectations that a politician was just going to, deliver on their promises, and how is that working out? Sometimes disappointment actually comes from within, from ourselves. I ask myself at times, like, I just feel like I should be further along than I am right now. Maybe you feel that same way. Further along in your faith, or further along in a relationship, or further along in a career, or just further along in some area that you're just not there yet. Or it could be that I just thought that I could do better, better on a test, better on a project, better on something that, an interview that would have made a big difference in my life. And lo and behold, it didn't go that well. If you would, I want you to think about your greatest disappointment over the last 12 months. And you don't have to think hard about it because it's like it's just there in front of you. But if you think about your greatest disappointment in the last 12 months, I'm going to ask you if you would then rate it. Here's what I mean. On a 1 to 10 scale, if your disappointment was just like a 1, which would be moving on, all the way up to a 10, in which it still just hangs with you. There's still deep hurt in your life because of that. Okay, got a number? How many would say that your number, the disappointment, greatest one in 12 months for you is 5 or less? 5 or less. Can I see your hands? Okay, good. That's good. How many would say mine's at about a level 6? Some, okay. How about 7? And we have a level 8 disappointment going on in your life? Some there. How about are in the 9 or the 10s? Yeah, I mean, that just brings back to that's the hurt. The higher the number, the greater the hurt that we feel with this. When we talk about disappointments, I mean, sometimes we just want to dismiss them, right? I mean, like, hey, life has disappointments. Everybody's going to experience disappointments that way. And we just want to, sweep it under the rug, dismiss it, as I say. We don't want to do that. And here's the reason. Because undealt with disappointment in our lives, it doesn't just leave us with, kind of a bad feeling. It actually begins to affect us. Disappointment can train us to expect less, to trust less, to risk less, and ultimately to live less in our lives. That's the effect that it's having in our life that way, which is why we wanted to include it in this series, Faith When Life Hurts. And there is a great help, a great tool that I'm delighted to be able to share with all of us this weekend. Something that has served me so well, and something that you're going to be able to use to be able to dissect whatever disappointment comes into your life, to understand it and then take steps forward with it as well. If you have a Bible with you, we're going to go and look at it now. It's found in Proverbs chapter 13, verse number 12. So if you have a Bible on your phone, you have a physical Bible with you, let me encourage you, open it up right now. I'm sure you're going to want to take some notes for your coming back to and sharing with others in the future. Proverbs 13, verse number 12, I'm going to have all of us read it together. So it'll be up on the screen for us to be able to do that. Ready, everybody? Here we go. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is it's a tree of life. Now, let's just focus on the first half right now together. Let's read this. Ready? Hope deferred makes the heart sick. God has so much packed into this for us. Let's just take a little deeper dive into it for just a second. The word hope there in Hebrew, it's the word yahal. And what it's talking about here is it's, looking forward to, it's expectation, it's desire that we have. Now, it's not just optimistic wishing. Ya'el is actually, it's an expectation that you've taken hold of and you're continuing to hold on to right now. This is my hope. This is what I'm expecting to take place. The word deferred means something in a distance, something that's put off. The word masak means there is no end in sight. Expectation, no end in sight. Is going to impact us or result in this. And there's a compound word that's used here, 2 Hebrew words that are being put together. The 2 words together, first is leb, heart. Now, in Hebrew, this is what is very significant, and we could misunderstand this. When you hear hope deferred makes the heart sick, you might go like, well, that means it emotionally impacts me in a negative way. In other words, hope deferred gives me negative emotional feeling. The Hebrews, though, saw so much more in this, because when they used the word heart, it meant the whole person. Not just the center of emotions, but it was the center of will. It was the center of thinking. It was the center of emotion as well. In other words, it was the soul. Your heart is your whole person. So it's got this full impact. It's a physical, mental, spiritual, emotional impact it's going to have. And then sick, it can mean physical sickness, but it also can mean to be made weak. In other words, hope deferred makes the heart sick. When you put those 2 words together, it is a whole person discouragement that comes down upon a person. So the maxim that God gives to us in this proverb is this. I encourage you to write it down, but I want you to say it with me together. Here we go. Unfulfilled expectation brings disappointment. Let's say it again. Unfulfilled expectation brings disappointment. I want you to think about your greatest disappointment in the last 12 months and ask yourself this. What was I expecting? And all of a sudden now, this is going to open up for us with way more insight. And I want to up the ante a little bit. In doing so, I know I'm going to run the risk of making some of us uncomfortable. Nonetheless, I think there's high value in this. How many would say that you have been disappointed with God in your life? Can I see your hands? I've been disappointed with God. Now, some of you right now are like, this is like a lightning rod. Sacrilege. How can you be disappointed with God? Like, who are we? If he's God, it doesn't work that way. Until we understand this, there is going to remain a wall that is up between us and God, and we're never going to be able to get the hope and help that he wants us to have in our lives. You see, experiencing disappointment with God is not a unique thing. In other words, it's just not you. If you've experienced disappointment, if you felt disappointment with God, you are among many saints that have done the same. Here's what I mean by that. The Bible is filled with heroes of the faith that have been disappointed with God. Let me take us through a few of them. I'll give us 8, but there's so many more with this. Let's start out with Abraham. Abraham was referred to as the father of faith, and yet these are his words to God. He says, "Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless?" Now, what Abraham is saying to God is this: you made me a promise that I'm going to be the father of a great nation, and I am now an old man, and my wife is an old woman, and we do not have a child. So what can you give me since there is no child in my life? Deep disappointment. Moses was called the friend of God. Moses expressed this. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble upon your servant? What have I done that has so displeased you that you put the burden of all these people on me?" Moses was disappointed because as he's leading the children of Israel into the promised land, it's like way harder than he thought. These are just people complaining and complaining and complaining. And it's like, God, I thought you were just going to make this, so much easier for me to do. In the book of Ruth, Naomi says this: "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara." The word Mara means bitter. "Call me Mara because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." Talk about disappointment, right? You go like, what's with Naomi? Her husband has died, and then her 2 adult sons have just died as well. She's expressing her disappointment to God. Elijah, one of the most famous prophets of the Old Testament, sits down under a broom bush and prays that I can die. He says, "I have enough, Lord. I've had enough. Just take my life." Elijah's saying this. He goes like, "I've been faithful in serving you, and if this is what ministry is like cut me out, God. Just kill me right now." Jonah, Jonah and the whale. Jonah says, "But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong." He's talking about a response that God had just made. It seemed very wrong, and he became angry at God. And he prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? The reason I didn't want to come here is because I knew if I did, then the people of Nineveh weren't going to get judged. I want to see them judged. I want to see them punished. Now you're not going to do it because they repented. I'm just so disappointed with you." Jeremiah, one of God's prophets, says, "You deceived me, Lord. I'm ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. God, this is not what I envisioned serving you was going to be like at all. You just, deceived me here." Habakkuk, one of the minor prophets, he's looking at the circumstances that he finds himself in and says this: "Why do you make me look at this injustice? Why do you tolerate this wrongdoing?" And what he's complaining about is this: that pagan nation had taken Israel into captivity. And it's the pagans that are punishing the people of God. God's using them to deal punishment out to the Israelites. He goes like, this just isn't right. And that was the disappointment that he was speaking forth to God. And then we have Martha, who says this to Jesus: "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus, my disappointment with you is you failed. You failed me. You failed our family that way. So let me ask, as you think about your disappointment with God, what were you expecting from him? What were you expecting God to do or not do that way? See, a really important insight is this: disappointment with God is not because he has failed, but actually it's because we have quietly added to the promises he's given to us expectations, assumptions, things that he never said. that he never made that way. It goes kind of like this. God gives us a promise, and then we take that promise and we add our expectation or assumption to it. Then we look at the gap between our life now, what we expected God would do, and the gap in between is our disappointment.
I paused it right there because I thought that was just like, wow, pretty powerful. What what was said about how what we expect God to do and things that we add that God never said that he would do, but we have like this expectation. But yeah, I'll get back to the video, but I thought that was really eye opening.
Appointment with God. He didn't come through. Follow me? You can work something like this. Here's some promises, and here's what we might do with them. Hebrews 13:5, God promises, I will be with you. Now, we assume then if God is with us, well, then things are going to be good, right? Things are going to get better or easier in our life because God's with us. Another promise. Romans 8:28, God says, I will bring good. I will work in all things for good. Now we hear that promise and we go, well, this is what we think is good. So this is what God is going to do. We assume that work that way, the outcome that we want. God promises that my grace is sufficient for you. We hear that promise and it's like, that means God is going to take care of the problem that I've got in my life. It's going to go away, right? Maybe we look at this promise that Jesus made. He said, now in this world you'll have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. When we hear that, well, then we assume, well, if that's the case, if I follow Jesus, then things will go good for me. If I follow Jesus, then things will go good for my family as well. One more, great promise. The book of Lamentations, God's promise. I'll put in this other one for prayer. Jesus said, ask and you'll receive, seek and you'll find, knock and the door shall be open to you. So God promises us, if you pray, I'm going to work. But we assume that that means that God's going to give us what we ask for and how we've asked for it. And then lastly, from Lamentations, the promise that God is good and faithful. And we take that promise to mean this, that because God is good and faithful, then I'm not going to have to experience pain or brokenness or difficulty in my life. When you think about God and think about disappointment, when it's come back to the truth and the truth, right? Truth and truth would be this. The truth is, God always keeps his promise. God never breaks a promise. He always keeps his promises. And the truth that sometimes I don't understand what all God is doing in my life or in the world around me. I don't understand God's working. And I love how he, just brought this forth through Isaiah. God reminds us of this, that my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. You see, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Sometimes I just don't understand it. When you're in that place, like, I just don't understand what God is doing, here's what I ask you to do. I want you to interpret what you don't know about God by what you do know about God. I want you to think about, in this area, like, I don't understand how God is working here, through all the other ways that you've seen and heard about how God is working. So you want to take what is not known and interpret it by what it is known and you're sure of, rather than vice versa, that can put you into a bigger, deeper hole that way. Now let's go back again to our disappointments. I've already asked you, what is the chance that you are going to experience some disappointment before the end of the year? The percentage would be somewhere between what and what? Yeah, between 100 and 100, right? I mean, yeah, right? And here's what I want to remind us. God knows this, not just because he's omniscient, but he knows this and knows what we're going to be facing and wants to help us with this because he's the one that gave us Proverbs 13:12. He's the one that wants us to be taking this truth and making sure that we both understand it and are applying it in our lives to get the help that we can. So Here's a couple practical things that all of us need to immediately just start to put into our lives. Let's start with this matter of expectations, because we know that unfulfilled expectations lead to disappointment, brings us to disappointment. So when it comes to our expectations, one of the things we want to do is we want to look at them. We want to ask ourselves, is my expectation real or realistic for me to have? Example, let's say, we'll look at this from a married person's life. Now, whether you're married or not, doesn't matter. Just assume for just a second that you are. You'll follow along with me in this. So as a married person, you look at your spouse and you expect your spouse to meet all of your needs and to make you happy. Just two things. If you have that expectation for your spouse, how are you going to end up? Yeah, right. You just I'm going to be deeply disappointed, right? Like if you expect that your spouse is never going to change, never going to hurt your feelings, never going to make any mistakes, how's that relationship going to work out? You're going to live with this regular and constant disappointment. Now, you don't have to apply this just to marriage, but apply it to your friends, apply it to your acquaintances, apply it to anyone you know that way. In fact, what we just covered in the last 45 seconds, it can revolutionize your marriage. So many times our expectations then get complicated by what I deserve. I deserve, so I expect of you, and all of a sudden, we are deep in disappointment quicksand, aren't we? Now, not only do we want to make sure our expectations are realistic, we also want to make sure that we are expressing them. I mean, I suppose it's reasonable that you just expect your spouse, your friend, your neighbor to know what you're thinking, right? Let's say that you are a person that puts a high value on being on time. You want to be in places on time, and if you're not early, you're not on time. Anybody know a person like that? Okay. So if you know that kind of person, if that person experiences someone that isn't on time, meeting, et cetera, how is that person going to feel? They're going to feel what? The on-time person is going to feel what when the not on-time person, is not on time? Yeah, you know how that works, right? I mean, they're disappointed. They can be judgmental with regards to that. So let's make sure that we are talking about them. So this would never happen. So once upon a time in a faraway land called Waukesha, there lived a pastor named Guy who was married to a woman named Denise. And because Guy wanted to be a good husband, he set up, an evening out, set up reservations at the restaurant, and communicated to Denise, "Hey, on Friday, I'll be home about 5:15, and then we'll be ready to go, and you've just got a great night planned that way." And so at 5:15, Denise is there sitting at the kitchen table, ready to go. At 5:30, Guy walks in the door. With a smile on his face, cheer in his heart. And he's met by ice and fire. Fire in the eyes, ice in the countenance. He was not expecting this. And so he responds in a less than pleasant way, like, "What the heck? We got plenty of time to get to the restaurant. I'm well within the boundaries of 5:15-ish, right?" Yet we would simply, express she would express "Okay, if you tell me 5:15, then I expect that we're going to leave at 5:15. If it's going to be 5:15-ish, just tell me 5:15-ish that way." You know the difference of just making a simple expression that way? 15 minutes. It doesn't matter. We're still going to be there on time. But that 15 minutes of expectation gap is the difference between a wonderful night and a ruined night that way. So let's not assume a person with no expectation, but let's just, let's express them to one another. It's a loving thing to do. When it comes to God, when he gives us a promise, we want to be looking at what are my expectations from this promise that God has made to me. This is one of the reasons why having faith-building friendships while being in a group is so important, because we can then interact with each other. We can say, "Hey, this is what God said, so I just expect this is what's going to happen in my life." And a person can go "Yeah, that's what faith would be all about." Or you would say, "No, no, that is not what that is saying there at all. You have added so much to it. You are going to end up disappointed." Because we ask ourselves, should we expect things from God? And the answer God would say is absolutely. You should count on me. You should count on me to do everything that I promised that I would do for you in your life. That is what faith is all about. So practically, look at your expectations. Are they realistic? Are they expressed? Are we added to God's promises, or what expectations are we putting upon him? And then don't neglect the tree of life. And you go what? What does that mean? Let's go back to Proverbs 13, verse number 12. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. And this is a fascinating term, and it's just like, cries out to us. Because the tree of life is only mentioned in 3 books in the Bible. It's mentioned in Genesis, chapters 1, 2, 3. It's mentioned in Revelation. At the very last, so you get the very beginning, Revelation 21, 22. You get the tree of life lost, you get the tree of life restored. And then here in Proverbs, it's a tree of life. Hope that comes into our life is a tree of life. And the tree of life is God's symbol for his blessing. It's a symbol for that which is life-giving. It's a symbol of that which he desires and wants for us. So what do we do when we find ourselves in the midst of disappointment? We want to make sure that we take perspective to add to that. Here's what I mean. If you're going through a disappointment in your life and you're just wondering, does anybody love me? Am I just being rejected by everybody? God wants you to know this. And here's the perspective. I love you and I have proved it. In fact, my words to you are this, Romans 5:8. But God proved his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We're going through challenging times in our life. God says, I want you to keep the perspective of the resurrection with you. Last week was Easter. That's when we kicked off this series. It was so apropos that we did that. And God said, with whatever you're going through, with whatever your need for me is, I want you to remember these words. I love these words from Ephesians. I pray that you will begin to understand how incredibly great God's power is to help those who believe. It's the same mighty power that raised Jesus from the dead. With what you're going through, put that alongside of your disappointment. And it can have life, not just the drain that's going on that way. At times we just need to be reminded that this life is not all that there is. In fact, God said, eyes not heard, nor ear, eyes not seen, nor ear heard, nor has entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those that love him. Keep hope, this tree of life in the midst of our disappointments. And I want to ask you, are you stuck? Have you gotten stuck over some disappointment, a circumstance, a person, yourself, God? Are you just stuck there? And right now, it's causing you to expect less, to trust less, to risk less, to live less in your life. If so, knowing that Jesus will never disappoint us, we want to come to him for the life that he offers. In fact, Jesus says this. He says, I want you to know the truth, so the truth can set you free. And when we are honest about these disappointments and look at them and take them apart, then we can begin to move forward. And for some, that's going to be moving forward with God in your life. Now, before I just wrap this up and end, I just have to ask this question. Would anybody be disappointed if I walked off the stage right now and didn't tell you why I have this red box here? I'm here thinking what is that box there for? You expected me to say something about this, didn't you? I can't believe you expected that of me. Now, I'll tell you this. If I tell you about this red box, then I am going to set myself up for a potential disappointment. So do you still want me to tell you about it?
Okay, so the red box, and we can kind of skip past the red box, but it's an illustration about what a real situation that happened to Pastor Guy when he took over his first church. And it was the person who gave it to him said, here, this is for you. And me and my family were leaving the church. So basically there was in that box about 6 months of unpaid bills. Unpaid bills that the church had. And Pastor God was like, what? This is wow. And so Pastor God teases about how putting the red box on the new pastor who is going to be Pastor Bill, who is going to be the lead pastor. And so that's what that's about. So I'm going to skip past that part.
For you, this former pastor wanted to make sure that I gave this to you. I'm resigning as treasurer, and my family and I are leaving the church. And he turned and he walked out the door. And I realized this is a box of past due bills. You talk about being disciplined. You should have a box full of bills sitting on. All right, church, let's take a moment. With the bill, I think that can make all the difference in the world. Will you join me in that? Will you do that? Yeah. I'm going to have our campus hosts come up to be able to take us into a moment in which we can respond to God over that which he's been working in our life and in his word today. Jason. All right, church, let's take a moment to respond to the message that we just received. A theologian, Dallas Willard, said the general human failing is to want what is right and important, but at the same time, not to commit to the kind of life that will produce the action we know to be right. So I want to invite you to take a moment to actually not just want something, but to respond and pray. And it might sound something like this: Holy Spirit, I've been disappointed in myself. Help me to listen to or follow.
So that is the message that I heard today. And, you know, have you ever, I have a question. Have you ever felt disappointed even while trusting God? Has anyone felt that? Felt disappointed even while trusting God? And then the other question, just be honest. Have you ever questioned God? Have you ever questioned God? I know some people, they're like, no, I've never did that. I've never, but I just, it's just a question that I have. And if you have, with any of those two questions, would you leave a comment in the comment section? And so, upon just ending this live, I just want to say, if this conversation that we had, if it spoke to you this afternoon, can you do two things? First, I would like to say, don't carry disappointment alone. Bring it to God, even if all you can say is, Lord, I don't understand, but I still trust you. And second, just go ahead and put in the comment section that I still trust you, God. I still trust you. And so I'm glad we can have this conversation and that I was able to share this with you, because a lot of times these things are not talked about and people are just carrying a lot of things, and honestly they feel some other kind of way, and then that's where some people, they end up just leaving the church because they've been told that if you do this, this is going to happen, you're going to get yours, you're going to, just all these things. And sometimes we do have an expectation of some things, and it doesn't always come out how we think. So if this blessed you, please will you share this video with someone who may be struggling right now, because we don't always talk about this, but we need to. And also, if you haven't already subscribed, please do like, share, subscribe, and join me for more real conversations, because when faith meets real talk, solutions are born. So, everyone, have a great evening, have a great night, first day of the week, and until next time, take care, everybody. Bye.